what I said was, welcome to Books and Bars. My name is Jeff Kamen. Thanks for being here. Tonight's book is Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. I love to hear what you guys thought of the book. So please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you, ask you to unmute yourself, and then ask a question, make a comment. Alternately, you can use our chat. I'll be using both, but I try to pay most attention to our actual discussion that we're having here in front of each other, or at least virtually. But I will be putting fun notes and other things in the chat and be checking in also to see what we're missing or not missing there. Anyone want to kick it off tonight and tell us what they thought of it? You could tell us, what you would rate it on 1 to 5 stars, as though you were doing this on Goodreads or Letterboxd or something like that, and maybe tell us why. If not, I'll start by telling you a bit about the author. She was born in Ghana in 1989. She was raised in Huntsville, Alabama. She holds a BA in English from Stanford University and an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop, where she had Dean's Graduate Research Fellowship. She lives in Berkeley, and her debut novel, which we read at Books and Bars, Homegoing, was published to wide acclaim in 2016, as was her second novel, Transcendent Kingdom, which was published in 2020. Anyone want to start by telling us what they thought of Gyasi's second book, especially if you read her first one with us? Maybe you can compare and contrast. Tell us what you thought. If not, I'm going to have to tell you what I thought first, and no one wants to hear that. But Rebecca saves us with a hand. Rebecca, I'm unmuting you or asking you to unmute yourself. Please talk to us.
I was very glad that you had decided for us to read this book. I had really enjoyed the first book, and I'd gotten to listen to the author give a lecture. So that was my first introduction to that. So I was kind of looking forward to this very much. The book itself covered some, I would say, fairly common themes, how religion can really affect a family, how immigrants have a raw deal, especially if you're an immigrant of color, how the world is not really a very safe and secure place for a lot of people. And at first, it just felt, like a lot of bad stuff was happening all the time. And I was kind of sad. But I kept going because she writes beautifully. And I wanted to see if what was the point of telling this story, and it ended up in such an interesting place for me. I didn't realize at the end that I would be, I guess, pleased that she actually had a true religious experience, and that she, and that made her life richer, even though religion as a whole wasn't, really great for her family. I don't know. I had very mixed feelings, and I had to kind of sit with it for a while. And I reread the ending because, of course, it was another one of those books that wrapped up everything in one last chapter, and I don't know how I feel about those sometimes. Does it give me enough time to come to a perspective? So anyway, I let it sit. I reread the ending. I was glad that there was a good ending. So in the end, I really, really loved the book. Even though it was hard, and I realized that even though I had my own religious background, and I was a child of missionaries in the Philippines, and had a kind of a different but very immersive experience with religion as well, my life has been very different from hers, and so I'm glad she told the story and shared. So that's all.
Thanks, Rebecca. I also found it a bit challenging at first, and maybe even all the way through. I guess I was surprised at how much of it was looking back, and I guess I was thinking that there was going to be more in the sort of the current time or the present tense, and maybe a comparing and contrasting there, and how that affected her more in this like current timeline and I felt like I didn't get as much of that, and I certainly got a lot of how she got to where she is. But I guess maybe also with you saying the ending seemed sort of abrupt, that I wasn't exactly sure how I felt about where she is now, or where she was left. But I'm still thinking about it too. I guess initially it didn't have the same charge for me as her debut, Homegoing, but I was quite excited to read it and to discuss with you all. I'm excited to see Dr. Todd back in the house with a hand up. Dr. Todd, may I unmute you? Please talk to us, sir.
Hey, how are you? Yes, back from COVID land, and dealing with all, but happy to be here. I echo a lot of what Rebecca said, and I had to be honest. At first, I picked up this book and thought, Jeff, again, we're going to go down this trail of and I stepped back away from those thoughts, and it did not take me long at all to get immersed into this. And I was found myself real respectful of a good storyteller, and she seemed to be a really good storyteller. And I respected, especially where it was, this is about me from my perspective. I'm not shouting values to you. I'm just sharing with you what this looks like in my life lived. In her quasi-fiction life lived, I guess. I agree with Rebecca. There was a multitude of very real experiences and what I would classify as very real traumas. And I'm surprised that she actually came out the end as healthy as she did, considering some of the magnitude of those traumas. That said, I thought the ending was very appropriate. It seemed to me like it was my future really isn't the issue here. I'm okay. This is what I know thus far. And the only thing I know about going forward and tomorrow is I'll know it when I get there. I'm not going, one of the lessons it seems like she was saying I've learned is don't let me tell you a story of what's going to happen, because you know that God has a sense of humor. So I'm just going to tell you how I got here, and then tomorrow's another day. And so I was very pleased with it and give it high marks. I thought it was a good read.
I'm happy to hear that, Todd. But I got to ask you, what when you initially thought, "Oh no, Jeff, you got me going down this path again"? What were you relating that to? Which book, or in general, you initially just weren't liking it, or
the Life Through My Vagina one? That was the 1 star barely quasi porn novel from an author that just in my mind didn't get it.
Okay, I know of what you're speaking now, but I am going to just leave it as Dr. Todd's Life Through His Vagina, as he
not my vagina,
which...
her vagina. Yeah.
but you said it, and we might read it for March. So it sounds great, Todd. So thank you.
We already read it. It was the one that we read.
I know. I know what you're talking about. I'm having fun with you saying that, and imagining you writing it and the story from your perspective. And I'm in.
Oh.
I'm all in. So when you get time, and thank you for doing the COVID work that you're doing. I'm getting my booster shot next week. I'm very excited for that. So yeah.
Get vaccinated, everyone, please.
Yes. And I'm disappointed in my boy Aaron Rodgers, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We are going to talk to Allie Schilling from Stillwater. Am I right, Allie? Are you in Stillwater right now? Talk to us.
I am coming at you live from Stillwater. Hi, everybody. I felt like the thing that stuck with me, I finished this book about 2 weeks ago, and I have such admiration for how she described living with addiction, and how beautifully I feel like this character honored her brother and his story. It's really like stuck in my heart. and she describes, at his funeral that people were talking about him as only the portion of his life that had taken place before his addiction was worthy of examination and compassion. And that line just, man, I love that it was not only compassion, but examination, because I think it's easy to think of the story as just the addiction piece, but we got to know her brother. We got to hear that part of the story and also all the rest of it. And that just I thought that was just so beautiful and very, very touching. And for me, my favorite part of the ending, I just really loved that her mom wasn't alone when she died, and that she seemed to have, she survived and seemed to have a pretty good death as deaths go. And so I thought that was a really beautiful description, and I felt really like attached to her mom, and I felt very attached to these characters. So I enjoyed it a lot, and I haven't read Homegoing. I missed that one, so I'm definitely going to read it.
Allie, yeah, you should definitely read that one. With your thoughts on this one, I think you'd really enjoy Homegoing also. So do check it out. Thank you for that. And I see Mark has his hand up. Mark, from somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, I assume. Am I correct? Perhaps in the woods. We'll let him tell us.
That's right. I am in Salem, Oregon. So.
Okay, there you go. It's not to be confused. Is that like a new Salem where they're like, let's burn some more witches? It works so well on the East Coast. Let's do it on the in the West Coast now.
Yeah, I think they ran out of city names at the Mississippi River, and they just started duplicating names beyond that point. There's a Toledo out here, a Detroit out here. They're all named after the original one.
How can there be a second Detroit? You oh.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so, right?
Right.
Even I don't know if you know that Portland was a coin flip for Portland to be named Portland or Boston, and Boston was the loser of the coin flip, so Portland was named after Portland, Maine. So,
well, there you go. So, Mark, tell us, what'd you think?
Yeah, so I did not read Homegoing. I put this in kind of the Truth About Cats and Dogs category, the movie, which is notorious for getting a sort of 50% rating from everybody. Like, depending on how you feel on that day, you might like it a little bit more or like it a little bit less, but it didn't really grab me the way that I had hoped it would. And I am more excited to read Homegoing, since that was both her first novel, and it seems like the group liked that one pretty well, just from the limited context I have from the start of the Books and Bars discussion here. One thing I thought with the book was it felt like it kind of got tight in the middle third toward the end of the novel. Like, it got a little more, I don't know if it's too straightforward or something, or coalesced a little bit. It seemed a little more dynamic in the beginning. And it seemed to loosen up a little bit toward the end. But I thought that, especially that middle third, was a little too math for me, as far as, my connection with it as it went along. So.
Thank you, Mark. I want to give Mark a shout out. Mark used to be local with us, Books and Bars, and when he moved away, I think that's when he started the project. He's been keeping me up to date on, he's been going through the Books and Bars backlist and reading all of our old titles that we've read, which we're coming up next month will be our 250th book, The Midnight Library. So Mark is reading them and giving me a very brief synopsis on his thoughts on them. And every once in a while, I'm reminded of one that I liked quite a bit, and I throw that out to him and see if he's read that one yet or not. So Mark, at any point, if there's a lull in the middle of this conversation, like there was for you in this book, feel free to chime in the chat with some of your favorites from our backlist catalog, or anything, any questions. If anyone wants to recommend one of our oldies to Mark, feel free. But Mark, great to have you from Salem. Thank God it's not named Boston or Portland or Detroit or anything else. It is Salem, and that is the perfect name for where you are right now. And wherever you are, Mark, that's where you are. And I'm just glad you're with us tonight. But Kara's here too, and I'm excited. I mean, I know I have an idea where Kara might be calling from, but it's probably a secret location, so I'm not going to say it out loud. But it's really exotic. Talk to us, Kara.
Oh yeah, I'm calling from Little Canada.
What do I know about Little Canada? There's a Hub Hobby there. Are you anywhere near the Hub Hobby?
I live super close to the Hub Hobby, actually. It's like 7-minute walk.
Oh, that's so great. There was a time where our kids were super into things that it seemed like you could only get them at Hub Hobby. And I had a thing where I would drive by and I go, Hobby! And I got so excited about Hub Hobby. But it's been a while.
Well, the other big thing about Little Canada that's good is we got the Donut Hut, which has some of the really, I'd say like the best donuts in the Twin Cities for like bang for your buck. They're super cheap. And like you get there right at like 7 a.m. They're really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I liked this book a lot. I was a big fan of her other book. I actually think I probably liked Transcendent Kingdom more. So maybe that's like a off opinion from some other folks. Homegoing was really good, but I don't tend to like multi-generational stories. Like I just don't love that conceit as a novel. And I thought Homegoing was one of the best ones. Like it did it in a way where I like found myself still enjoying the book. But in general, I prefer to like stick with like one character or like with multiple characters in the same story rather than like going through a period of like 300 years, which I think Homegoing is like over a 300-year period. But anyway, Transcendent Kingdom, really loved it, but it definitely made me feel like terrible like a lot of the time. Like obviously I did feel compassion for all of the characters, but I think I saw like too much of myself in Gifty and like some of her more like toxic behavior and like how she like refuses help and stuff like that. So as I was reading a lot of the stuff she did, I felt like an intense discomfort as well. Not in like a bad way, in a very good, like the author is very talented in what she does way. But so I think personally for me, like my reactions were not always like full of compassion. I was like, don't do this, you idiot, because I was talking to myself as well. I liked all of the like scientific stuff that they added into this book and like how it like so clearly related to Gifty's own journey and like how she related to her family and kind of how she coped with her brother and her mother's behavior. And I don't know, I just really appreciated it. I thought it was a really good book, like a really humane portrayal of what it's like to deal with addiction and like people who you love who are addicted to things, and people who you love who are dealing with mental health issues. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this author and I'm excited to see all of the things she does in the future.
Thanks, Kara, and thanks for giving big ups to Little Canada. Little Canada sounds like it should be, so far north and close to the border, but it's really not.
I like to tell people I'm a little bit Canadian though, so it's like kind of fun.
That's awesome. I wish, we all should be a little bit more Canadian. There's a lot to admire there. I do think Minnesota is about as close to Canadian as you can be while still being, a U.S. citizen. I think that they would welcome us with open arms if they needed to. Speaking of welcoming with open arms, I think we have a new guest tonight, Kenny Coleman. Kenny Coleman with us. Kenny, can you unmute yourself and talk to us?
How's it going? Yeah, I just moved to Minneapolis and found you guys online, so I hope you don't mind me crashing the party. But
We
No,
love
I
it.
really
Where'd you
enjoyed
move from? Where'd you move from, Kenny?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Excellent. As opposed to, yeah, see, I'm glad you said Ohio, because after what
Not
Mark said,
Cincinnati,
there could
Oregon.
be, yeah, there could be Cincinnati anywhere. Who knows? But
Yeah.
all right. Talk to us.
No, I really enjoyed the book. I really love the narrative style. I agree with Mark. Like the first half, I thought was really captivating. Loved the author's voice, and I actually listened to it on audiobook. So the jumps between different settings was even more interesting because it went from a lab setting to her childhood to present day personal relationships. So I really liked that dynamic. I feel like that kept it very exciting. But yeah, I'd say like the right at the start of the second half, or maybe like the last third, it slowed down a little bit. And kind of to Kara's point, I think that's when her own kind of inner demons became more pronounced and she became more shut off to any help, but even to herself. So maybe that was intentional. Maybe that was kind of the author bringing that out, but it felt less relatable at that point and a little bit more hard to just to kind of see the personality of her coming through. But I really loved how it all tied in. And also, I think Ali mentioned it before. I thought it was really beautiful how when kind of around Nana's passing, she kind of talked about how the entire community was there for him at his best. So when he was, the star of the basketball team and kind of the star athlete, and there was all that support. But once it kind of twisted around, there was no one else there. And I thought that was a really good narrative, not only for his experience, but also just for addiction in general, where, people are very much there at your peak, but then once you need help, oftentimes people might take a step back. So I thought that that was a really powerful way of kind of telling that and showing her discomfort with her church community and kind of the two-sidedness of it. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really, really interesting read with a lot of different dynamics. So
Thanks, Kenny. And you know what? For a first timer, you came in like a pro. It's like you
Thank
knew
you.
how to do it. I'm proud of you. Way to go.
I read
So,
the Spark Notes, so it's all, no, I'm kidding.
well,
kidding.
welcome. We're happy to have you, and feel free to come back with any other questions or comments or use the chat. So thanks for being here. Susan's on the line. Susan, do you want to tell us where you're videoing in from tonight?
Oh, the warm and wonderful Brooklyn Center.
Brooklyn Center, yay!
In the hood, yes. So like Kara, I really liked this one. I also read Homegoing, and I think I like this one even better. And I tend to really like Nickel Boys was one of my more recent really favorite books that we've read, and those kind of short, but they pack a lot of stuff in a small amount of pages. And I think I resonated with the mental health issues and especially the mom. My maternal grandmother, this was Depression era, was one of those people that would go to bed for great periods of time. And so my mom was the oldest of three girls. And so the stories in our family would revolve around grandma and just not being present for great chunks of time, usually during the winter. And so all of those scenes just kind of felt really personal to me, kind of thinking back, and it made me do a lot of thinking about my mom and her growing up during the Depression and what her mom must have been going through because, a little farm in Western Wisconsin with three little girls and dealing with mental health issues that, nobody would talk about or there wasn't a label for. So just kind of brought up a lot of feelings and memories. But I think overall, I like this author and definitely will read more.
Excellent. Thanks, Sue. Yeah, you bring up a great point about how times have changed as far as our understanding of mental health, but yet we still have a ways to go. But I like how you bring up this idea of, if this were a few years ago, it would have just been, someone saying, that they don't feel well, or they're just sad and they're going to be in bed for a while, and not really addressing what the real problems are. I really like this author too. Even though I didn't like this one as much as Homegoing, I do think that she is one to read, and really a bright a bright star, to kind of look at for the future here. So I look forward to what she does next. Does anyone have a question that they want to throw out to the group? I haven't been able to completely read the chat. I just saw some references. We talked about Nickel Boys, Colson Whitehead, one that we read and liked quite a bit. I do have his newest book, Harlem Shuffle, on our list. I posted a link of some of the books that we're thinking of for 2022. And you can always take a look at those and let me know which ones you're interested in reading. But Harlem Shuffle is on there. I've talked to some people who have liked that one quite a bit already. I will definitely check it out, whether we do it together or not. I see Allie's hand is back up. Allie, talk to us.
Yeah, I have a question. So there was a piece where Gifty was having that dinner party with Raymond, and she was talking about her experience kind of like being with his friends. And she says, whenever I listen to his friends speak about issues like prison reform, climate change, the opioid epidemic, in a simultaneously intelligent but utterly vacuous way of people who think it's important simply to weigh in, to have an opinion, I would bristle. I would think, what's the point of all this talk? What problems do we solve by identifying problems, circling them? And that question kind of stuck with me too, because I was kind of like, it brought up a lot of, it made me think, it stuck with me, and it made me think about like, what is the point? And also like, if you can't ask questions and identify them, isn't that the place you kind of have to start? And also who can ask those questions and kind of authentically, it just that I'm wondering what others thought about that question, that statement she asked.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing to bring up. I'd be interested in hearing anyone else's thoughts on that also. I see Kara had her hand up, but Todd and Will's hand shot just up, and I always go for the fresh hand first. So we're going to hear from Will next. Will, where are you calling in from, Will?
I'm right here in downtown Minneapolis, my tiny apartment with a crazy dog running around right now. So if you hear anything going on, that's him. Yeah, I did want to jump in on that dinner party scene and that quote also struck me a lot as well. And I think it's like one of the few, I feel like in the book, there's a couple of moments where you kind of see like a little bit of a critique of academia culture and kind of what I would call like elite America. And I think some of the perspective she was bringing in was this immigrant or person of color, but I think some of it was also like the Alabama in her coming out a little. So it was really interesting seeing these moments where college students would talk down to her because she was like a Jesus freak, at the same time they're in these classrooms professing like we need to be more tolerant of divergent identities and ideas. And as someone who's really into politics and specifically like a policy wonk, I do kind of agree with what is the point of having all of these very intense discussions about things that like politically don't really seem like, well, we're never going to get to roll out anything like this or anything close to this. So what is the point of having an opinion? One other thing I really liked about the book really quick, one of my really good friends in college, who I met a bunch of other friends from them, grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. So I felt a very strong connection to Huntsville in this book. And they were all grew up in a pretty privileged part of Huntsville that is a small, tiny Democratic bastion in a very red state. So it's interesting kind of comparing notes of what this author's biographical and her character's fictitious experience was in Huntsville versus what they thought their hometown was like. So that was a fun thing to talk about as well.
So Will, I like how so you're sort of just echoing and agreeing with the, what is the point of just talking about it? And I guess I I like that, and I would love to hear if anyone can answer what do they think there is a point to the talking about it, and what is that? What we might get from it, instead of asking the same question. Does anyone have an answer for it, or think that there is, or are you just agreeing that there really is no point either? I'd love to hear it. Thank you, Will, and I love the giant calendar behind you. I wish I could zoom in and see how busy your life is, but it sounds like it's busy with the dog and everything. So thanks for being here from downtown Minneapolis. I see Nan Hackett's got her hand up. Nan, talk to us.
Yes, I also am new.
Welcome. Where are you coming in from, Nan? Where's your video from?
From St. Paul.
Oh, that's so far away. Thanks for being with us tonight.
And I can understand why Gifty said that about what people talk and never seem to do anything, because she was trying very hard to approach the problem of addiction through her academic studies. And that was one reason why I wanted to read the book, because she does try to tackle, but at the end, she ends up sort of saying, I think, I listened to this book last summer, and it's really good to hear what other people say, because it's bringing back the book. I don't remember it that well, and because it was audio, it's not like I can leaf through the pages and remind myself of what happened. And I had listened to it because I thought Homegoing was brilliant. I really liked this book, but it seemed to me it's not quite brilliant. But anyway, some people cannot study in graduate school and get as far as Gifty did to try to solve a problem. And in some, just as she also couldn't solve the problem of her mother's depression. And it was really interesting to look at the addiction and the depression both in the same family, and wonder about the relationships. I think research on addiction has shown interesting things about dopamine, and research on depression has shown interesting things about the lack of endorphins. And it would be really great to come up with chemical answers, but we can't stop talking about it just because we can't come up with the answers. Although there are others who just want to talk about it to be able to score conversational points at a party. And I think Gifty's rightly making fun of those people.
Thanks, Nan, and welcome. I'm glad you joined us tonight from St. Paul. Thanks for being here and sharing your comments. I see, speaking of chemicals, Dr. Todd's got his hand up. Maybe he can speak to medical aspects of this. I saw it a little bit differently than I think Will and maybe some of the others. And I don't know if it's just, it hit me that way. We saw a conversation going on in her mind, and to me that revealed a sense of insecurity. So it was like, should I be insecure because I don't know why they're talking about what they're talking about when it doesn't seem to make sense to me, and I can't make sense of it when everything else I'm trying to make sense of? And so is something wrong with me? Because throughout her entire journey, she was showing us times when it was questioning, what's wrong with me? Why am I not like? Why am I not responding the same way? Or, could be like with the Baptist woman giving educational sessions to the church girls on sexual orientation or sexual behaviors. So I thought it was much more of a twist between
an expression of insecurity combined with, I think there was a little bit, are you just blowing and consuming oxygen for the sake of consuming oxygen? And I think she questioned that, though I'm not sure she was sure with that.
Thanks, Todd. I'm looking also, I think, you know, what Allie's saying in the chat can relate to this also when she brings it back and says, I want to, she said, quote, people who think it's important simply to weigh in, to have an opinion, end quote, reminds me a lot of social media and the complicated relationship I have with it right now. And I totally understand that. I think that the idea of sometimes the impulse to add in, to just jump into every conversation with whatever you're thinking or feeling, you might be better served to take a step back, think about it before you actually send that tweet. I think, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself now at this point. I would rather not just add into a conversation that without properly thinking about it, and you know, kind of taking a step back and looking at where am I coming from? What is, you know, what is my perspective in this, and does it help, or you know, am I just adding to, you know, a problem here and making it worse by just regurgitating or saying what I think or feel on it that might actually not, you know, have any bearing at all on this. So I just think it is important maybe to think about it. And I like what Will said also about how you know, it's part of this is also her Alabama roots maybe being in academia and coming from that also. Interesting stuff. Kara's got her hand up though. Little Canada, talk to us.
Yeah, so I'm glad that Allie brought this quote up. I had it in my notes to bring up too, so I'm glad we're talking about it. It reminded me of that book we read that I hated, Conversations with People, or Conversations with Friends. Sally Rooney. Sally Rooney's book. Yeah, okay. The book that only had unpleasant people who weren't friends with each other, who didn't actually have conversations and just gave speeches to each other. Anyway, I feel like she was at a dinner party with like those people. That's like the, you know, people who just are talking about a thing and they have like no personal, you know, emotional connection to it, or like it's all just an intellectual problem for them. And I felt like that was when she kind of gave her statement about that. I kind of felt like that's what she was talking about, right? Like they were just weighing in as if this was like an interesting, like, you know, thing to talk about, like a complicated math problem or like a philosophical debate. And like, they're not considering it from a human standpoint. And I think that's kind of the key difference. Like if you're at a dinner party and you're having a conversation with people, it's not that you like shouldn't say something or you shouldn't talk about certain topics, but like when you are doing it from like this distance and it's just like, like, what is this like issue? And you don't have any emotional connection to it and you don't really care about it. Like it's not like something that is, I don't know. So I just think there's like a line there, right? Like it's not even, it's a line on social media too. Like there are people who share stuff and they're doing it because like they're actually trying to raise awareness. And there's people who are sharing stuff because they worry about how it looks if they don't share stuff. And I like, it's a hard line to like know where someone's at because we don't know people's internal lives, but sometimes you can kind of get a sense if you know someone long enough, what they're doing it for. And when you're having a conversation, I feel like you have an even better sense of like how they feel about things. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I do think it's worth talking about things and having conversations, but especially if you're in a position of privilege, it should be like not just focused on like the intellectual pursuit of it. It should be really focused on like self-examination and like, you know, what role you are playing in society and challenging people's opinions, because sometimes you're having a discussion and you might change people's minds and you might influence, you know, how people are thinking, and that can be valuable. But But yeah, I don't know. I liked that appreciation. Like I really appreciated what she said. And another thing I really related to her about. And then the other comment I wanted to make that I forgot about the first time was that, again, what I thought was brilliant about this book is that I honestly could have forgotten that it was fiction. It really felt like all of the characters were so real. Like if you had told me this was a memoir, I would fully believe it. Like Gifty and like she did pull in so much real research too. That it really did feel like Gifty was a real person, and it was just so relatable. And also the fact that it didn't like quite wrap up in a neat literary way also made it feel very real. And so I don't know, that was another thing I loved about the book.
Thanks, Kara. Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
I wanted to say, yes, I totally agree, Kara. It felt like a memoir. I had to check to make sure that this wasn't Gyasi's story. And I liked at the end that she explained that she did have a friend who she lifted most of the clinician or the research from to understand it. And by the way, I did feel very, very, very sad for the Mousies. That was a difficult part. And I know intellectually that, it does good things, but anyway, it's very, very hard to know that that's something that goes on all the time in every higher education institution, all sorts of research facilities, all sorts of things. Anyway, going back to the social media thing and you guys made me think about some of my friends who I follow on Twitter, and I seek out their opinion, or I want to hear their thoughts. And I sometimes don't decide how I think about something until I hear what they've said, which means that I'm unsure of my own thoughts, and I haven't done the work myself to figure it out, and I realize that can be very troubling. And I think it's a symptom of early 21st century. I think it's also a symptom of COVID isolationism and the easy access that technology has in all our lives. I live alone, so much of my social media is with groups that I don't live immediately nearby with, and I have to think very carefully whenever I do decide to follow somebody, especially like a celebrity or somebody who has something that there's some reason why they're sharing their thoughts, and can I ever know why they are doing it? Is it just because they want to have a bigger social media presence, they want to make money, all those sorts of things. Anyway, it's exhausting a little bit to understand what I know. That my wanting to share my thoughts has really reduced in the, at least online in almost every format, excepting visuals. I do still post those things, but and I've not missed it. I may miss a little bit of gossip here and there about former friends and high school, acquaintances, etc. But it is much better to spend my time reading books like this than doing that other thing. So again, this book, thank you for the discussion. I now know how I'm supposed to think. No, kidding.
Rebecca, it's so interesting. I'm still on all of the socials, but I have definitely felt like I've taken just a big step back, and I don't really feel like commenting on everything, or just, I don't know. I'm hearing from more and more people that when I say, oh, you can find us on Facebook or whatever, like I don't do that, or I won't find you on Facebook and stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. And I mean, I use social media because of Books and Bars, a lot of it. And I've used it for other, previous work things. But I feel like I've gotten into more of like, who your tribe is, and you don't just have to put it out there for everybody, but you kind of have like smaller, maybe more personal conversations. just, you don't have to do it in public. Like I'm sort of afraid of Twitter. I mean, like I don't really like using Twitter for a lot of conversation at all. But I use it for books and bars. But I don't know. I mean, I'm still on Facebook, and it would be hard to pull off of that because of all of, friends and pictures and all of that. And I see, some people just switch to Instagram now, but Instagram's owned by Facebook. So it's like, I don't know. It's sort of the same thing, right? But yeah, it's tough. Yeah, we all got to kind of find our own way. And I do think, with this last 18 months though, of not really being in person as much or seeing each other, if you're staying off of social media, then you've really forced yourself into a situation where you're gonna have to read a lot of books, and I'll keep giving you good ideas for books to read. And then we can keep talking about them at least. Anyone else? I love asking you guys what questions you have, what you want to bring up. So thank you to those that have already, but what are some things that you want to discuss with the group regarding this book? Who else has any thing they want to bring up? Any questions, comments? Will, talk to us, Will.
I wanted to elevate what Mark put in the chat about some of Gyasi's other romantic relationships or romantic inklings, and get what people thought about that. I really appreciated that this character seemed to be bisexual, or she didn't really specify what she was, and I really appreciated the aspect that it wasn't, for her personally, it wasn't a big part of her identity to communicate a specific orientation. And I know a lot of people, I know a fair amount of people who are LGBTQ who just have the opinion of it like, this is one of the lesser interesting things about me, and I don't take it as a huge part of my identity. So it was cool to have that identity as part of the book, but not like the prominent, like, we're trying to check this box as well in this story about mental illness, immigrant families, people of color, and all the other topics it dealt with. I was also really happy she ended up with Han. Han sounded really fun. I liked his awkward blushing ears.
It was handled very, matter of factly, like, this is not what this story is about, and this is not just who I am, and I don't need to, explain this aspect of me in my relationships. And there are just different people that she had relationships with. I felt we didn't really, I mean, I don't know, by the end, I didn't really get a sense of that last relationship being that good or that strong, right? I mean, it's that one's over. So I don't know. And that's fine. It wasn't about that for her. It was almost like matter of fact in a way. Which is another thing about, like, I guess I still wanted more of her current life, like what was going on. And I don't know, like, I mean, I was interested in the mice and everything. So I wanted to know more about all of what was going on with her currently. But anyone else, anything in the chat that I'm not seeing that you guys want to elevate and bring to the group? The best thing you can do is to bring up the thing that you're hoping someone else does. Be the person to bring it up, and Kara's here to do that. Kara, talk to us. Kara, hi.
Forgot to unmute. I think, Jeff, you mentioned earlier in the chat, or you asked if we had learned anything or changed our minds about anything.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really changed my mind, but definitely broadened my perspective or made me try to think more actively about it. But I work with primarily immigrants and refugees. I teach English as a second language, and I work with the adults. So I teach like the parents of Gifty. And so like I come at it from very much like a perspective that's like focused on like the parent experience and like their relationship with their children. And I have my students talk to me all the time about their relationships with their children. A lot of them have young children, a lot of them have adult children. Some of these people I've known for like 6 years. So I've seen their like young children grow into high schoolers, and I've kind of like heard all about what it's like to have like a child growing up in the United States. And so a lot of times my perspective is very much like you don't know all your parents are doing for you. You need to be more grateful, like show respect to your parents. And, wow, your children aren't doing this, your children aren't doing that. Cause like, I don't know, that's what I hear. And like, I know their parents and like, I care about their parents. So it is like good to read the perspective of like the child and like Gifty's like complicated relationship with her mother, and she almost doesn't even have a relationship with her father, because I do think like, you know, I get students who come in with a lot of trauma and like mental health issues, and like I'm not necessarily like thinking about like what it's like to be their child and like the difficulties that that person might be having and like what their parents might be missing. So I just really appreciated that aspect. And it's something I think about sometimes. Like I have some students who are in their like 70s and 80s who like come to me with things and tell stories about their like ungrateful adult children, or who get the teachers to help them do certain things. And sometimes I do think, I was like, I bet like their children are like, those like English teachers at this like adult school are so troublesome. Like they helped my mom like do this dumb thing. Like I recently helped a student buy a massage chair because she was like really wanting to buy one. And she was like, her sons wouldn't help her. And in my head the whole time I was like, I wonder if her sons think this is a scam or too much money and they're trying to help her. But like her nosy teacher like helped her buy this like expensive massage chair. But like that's what she wants, and she's an adult, so I'm gonna help her anyway. But I was in my head like kind of thinking about what it would have been like, or what the children must think of their mother.
Kara's massage chair, that the company that you have on the side where you're just
right. It's where I make my real money.
You're linked to your Amazon store of massage chairs that you have. Well, that's thank you for that insight into what you do. I think there's a lot of times where we see each other once a month, some of us, and we never hear stuff like that. It's always fun. So if anyone else wants to relate to, if this book connected to you in your current life, your personal life, feel free to share that. I'd love to hear something from Kenny.
Yeah, so Dr. Todd mentioned in the chat, do you think the inclusion of mice might be a self-reflection of her as the mouse in the lab of the world? I think I saw the mice more as representing kind of her wanting to fix her mom's depression or fix Nana's addiction, right? So like a lot of it was, a lot of times in the way that she spoke about the mice and taking care of them, and also when she kind of went on the whole section about, if I could only fix the pleasure center or really understand, so a lot of what I think drew her to that field was very much, not just wanting to talk about it, but how do I get hands-on and use my, gifts, not meaning to be a pun, but like gifts to, change this and to potentially research this. So I think she saw a very emotional connection with the mice, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but as here's what I'm doing to really help change this for my mom, for my brother. So I think that was a good way of honoring them. So that's kind of how I read into the mice. And again, I love the scientific aspect of it, and that she brought in very real data and brought in, it felt very much like you were in the lab with her. So I think she did a really good job there.
I think you're absolutely right, Kenny. In fact, I think, doesn't she actually say that at one point, that this is why she's doing it? Like she's doing this in the hopes of, unless I just read that into it, but I could have sworn there is an actual line where she says, I hope that I will learn something which helps, so that this doesn't happen to someone like Nana again, or something like that. And yeah, I think she definitely is. Is working on them in the hopes of saving her mom, you know, that she couldn't save Nana, but yeah, great point. Anyone else, anything else that we haven't brought up about the book that you want to hear us discuss? Anyone else have what you think Gyasi was trying to say with this story? Kara.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So based on like her research into the brain and decision making, and like I'm interested in like how much control do you think we have over our decisions? Like how much can we almost blame anyone for anything that like causes harm when like so much trauma and so many like things seem to be at the root of all of it?
Well, let me ask you, what do you think? You know, I think you can say I'm this way because, you know, this person was like this to me, or because this is the way I was raised. But I mean, I think that whether Gyasi believes this or not, that, you know, it's still up to us. You know, that there still is free will, and it's, you know, we have to make these decisions and these choices. You know, they can be a lot harder, you know, and maybe we don't have as many options or as many choices because of our situation, or you know, what was done to us or how we were raised. But you know, I don't know. I'm coming from a place of privilege, though, where I feel like, you know, I have options and I can make my decisions. So interested in what other people think. Rebecca had her hand up. Rebecca.
I'm not going to respond to your just question. I had something else in mind.
I get that. Yep.
One thing showed, I think, a big part of her character, Gifty's character. Remember, she's complimenting Han on getting a paper into Nature, I think it was, you know, and she just kind of drops it, and, you know, and we're supposed to be like, I at the time was, of course, the guys, you know, being published in Nature, and then 2 or 3 or 4 pages later, or maybe he says, well, I'm only trying to keep up with you, because she'd had multiple articles published in Nature and several other magazines as well, and it was dropped in such a way that was so obviously not a, oh, look at me, I'm so great. It was just it, you know, or maybe it was just done so well that I don't see it as that. But it showed that her confidence in her position was not about having achieved necessarily these markers of, I don't know, success. But she needed to point it out to Han, because he would have seen that as a marker of success. I don't know. I thought that was a clue to her character, that Gifty wasn't being competitive about that. She was very confident in herself, and I never felt that wavered. And so often these introspective books can be, am I good enough? Am I strong enough? Am I, you know, all of those sorts of things. That was it never felt like that was an issue for her. It was her unhappiness that she couldn't help more. She couldn't help her mother more. She couldn't help her brother more. But it was not because she was not worthy. And I really like that.
Thanks, Rebecca. I like that too. Todd, I see you. Todd, I'm asking you to unmute. Todd, you still with us?
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, once again, I agree with Rebecca, but maybe a little bit further or slightly tangent. I think she still did live with the insecurity, and there was that issue of being number 2, because Nana was number 1 for his not only being male, I think, but also for his success in basketball and his potential for success. And I think she presented the interesting conflict of choice, which I agree with. I don't think that I read things just happen to you, but rather here's how you have a choice about things that happen to you. Because in being within a world of many, you can't not run into something. And I think I saw terrific compassion, but also real sadness for, Nana, her perspective of Nana. Look, you're number one in the eyes of all these people, and your vision, and yet this is what you chose, and you allowed it to consume you. And although substance addictions are horribly difficult, and indeed they're a beast of a relationship, our relationship with a beast, still there's choice involved there somewhere. And so at the end of the day, I thought it was an interesting pairing. I thought that the choices she made and the commitment she made was not only the one for the cure, but to see, can I eventually attain the same sort of glory that Nana did within the family, and get the recognition. Anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Todd. Some great points. And back to Mark in New Salem. I'm going to call it New Salem.
I'll allow that. Yeah, one thing I was thinking of as we're getting toward the, it looks like we're talking in the chat about some closing thoughts, but I thought it was interesting how there were two severe depressions that are referenced here, and two children that are, one who is lost and one who you could consider maybe is lost in terms of religion or some other aspects of life that disconnect her from her mother. So that was something that actually did make me feel a little more on the positive side of the ledger in terms of liking this more. That kind of parallelism or kind of thoughtful connection in terms of the two depressions that she went through. But it was, Gifty does not witness her mother's recovery from depression through the first one, when that seems more connected to her brother's loss. But she's more enmeshed in it when she's actually with her mother on site. But I thought that was an interesting dynamic for both of those relationships to kind of have their own connection to the mother's depression. And there's a rule of threes in improv. Jeff, you know this from improv background, but there are three losses here in terms of Chin Chin leaving the family as well. But she doesn't have the same kind of depression, at least known to us, with the loss of the father as she does with the two children. So.
Great point, Mark. And I want to yes and you. That was fantastic. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, and also for just holding back and just waiting till you felt like it was almost over, so that you could have like the best ending comment. That's like classic. Like you just like ended the improv show and got the big laugh. Way to go, Mark. But you know what the goal of improv is, Mark? It's to make your partners look better, make your scene partner look better, and you've done that tonight, Mark. You've made me look better. So thank you. I appreciate that. I hope that someday I can return the favor, Mark. No, you guys are great. Anyone, bring it up. Don't wait for somebody else. Is there anyone else, any other further comments, questions about tonight's book? I want to tell you that I'm really excited that we are going to be at Local Roots tomorrow night. It'll be our last time at Local Roots because they are forced to move and a new restaurant is coming in. So if Local Roots lands somewhere else and it works for us to do a nice patio season with them again, hopefully we will. They've been great. So if you're in town and can make it, we'll be inside at Local Roots one last time tomorrow. But especially St. Paul people, listen up. We're coming back to St. Paul. We're going to be at Urban Growler for the winter. So at least December, January, February to start. We have a schedule of dates there on Wednesdays. So Wednesday, December 8th is our first one at Urban Growler. And we used to be there. It was really good. And we'll be in the barrel room where we were before. So we have a room to ourselves. It's great. It's got big round tables and a nice sound system and good food and good drinks there. And that's where we'll be December, January, February. And we'll see what happens beyond that. But next month, as I said, is our 250th book. It is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. For you audio listeners, it is read by that promising young woman herself, Carrie Mulligan. Does an excellent job with it if you're looking for a good listen. But it works well in paper and hardcover format also. So whatever works for you, or even ebook. If you use our bookshop link that I've shared for our books, Books and Bars does get a little bit. So it's a nice way to support us. Thank you for using those links if you're interested in getting your books through there. And then Urban Growler and again, the Zoom next time is on Thursday, December 9th. I've also placed that in the chat, the invite. If you miss any of these things, if you dare come meet us on social media, you'll find us there. If not, booksandbars.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll get reminders and links, helpful things to all of this stuff from me. And I'm always looking for more ideas. I have a pretty long list that I throw to you guys. You guys vote on them, and then we kind of look at the season and decide, what the next ones coming up are. So we're selected through February. January is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And February is The Lincoln Highway by Amor Tolls, a favorite of Books and Bars. If you were lucky enough to be at Books and Bars at Bright Lake Bowl, Amor Tolls joined us one night, and it's really fun. I have some video of the event that I could share. It's on our YouTube, which is where this video will go also. So if you miss any of our events, you can check them out there too. Thank you guys so much. It's been great. Thanks to Rebecca. She did a sketch note and placed that in the chat also. She always does a great job of recapping, and it's just fun to look at and remember everything that was said. Well, not everything, but just I never know what's going to get mentioned, and it's usually something that embarrasses me, and I like that. Thank you, Rebecca, for. I'm just kidding. I love what you do.
I can always count on
embarrass
Dr. Todd
Yeah.
for some good choice.
Oh yeah, it's so great to have Dr. Todd back, and Dr. Todd, keep fighting the good fight. Everybody, please get vaccinated. I want to see you in person. I want to see you at Urban Growler or Local Roots or wherever we meet. But until then, we can keep Zooming. So Thursday, December 9th, we'll see you on Zoom. Otherwise, tomorrow night, Local Roots. Thanks again, you guys. Good night.